Before we get started, make sure you follow the podcast and rate it 5 stars on Spotify.
And then realising that I needed to actually show a bit of empathy, I guess be a bit resilient and manage it. And that's when I realised, I'm not doing it right. Maybe I could enjoy it. And you perhaps don't see rejection as much of a setback as you might. If you think leadership is about you, you're entirely misguided.
What's your vibe behind the mic?
What's my vibe behind the mic?
Are you concerned with the host?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you think I might bring some stuff up?
I think you should be more worried about what I might bring up.
It's my podcast, mate. So
I might pay Keelan some money to not edit some stuff.
Yeah.
Make out he has.
The producer.
And then play it.
Undercut me. All right, well, let's get into it. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Sunday Run. Big episode today, big guest.
Not too big.
Huge guest. Massive guest.
That's huge.
It's my mum. Rare. Mum, how are you? Oh, Jack Phillips, to everyone that doesn't know her. How are you? How's things?
I'm well, thank you, darling. It's an absolute pleasure to be here on the other side of the table, other side of the podcast mic. How am I? I'm really well. I didn't sleep that well last night. As you know, there is a dog in our household that does go out in the middle of the night. We still don't have a dog door. So I'm the idiot that lets him out. And then once I'm awake, I start thinking about all the things I need to do, including being on this podcast.
You've listened to every episode of podcasts I've ever done, I reckon.
Big fan.
A lot of feedback. Let's see if I can implement today. What do you reckon has been your number one piece of feedback to my podcasting?
Stop swearing. You don't need to. It actually shows a lack of confidence. You've got a great vocabulary and you're actually a really good conversationalist, so you don't need to swear.
Interesting. Well, I'll try not to swear for this episode.
Good.
For those that don't know, so you've done the Sunday Run programs and we're going to get into that soon. But it's a big reason as to why I wanted to get you on today, because you've started with like very, what I would say, minimal like base level fitness and being able to build it up. Before we do that, I wanted to kind of talk about who you are, like what you do. So do you want to give us a quick kind of rundown, especially in regards to work, like what you've done in regards to work, and then obviously like what your passions are as well?
Sure. So I got told off a lot at school for talking, so I realised that was a strength pretty early on. And I also was like most teenagers, sort of, 17, 18. I love music, pop music or popular music. And I listened to a lot of FM radio, which was the coolest thing around back then. There was no podcast and certainly wasn't online technology. So I actually lined up to the local radio station to see if I could get a job, and I did. So I started working in radio really young, 19, learned how to use a mic, how to manage a mixing desk. From radio went into marketing, seems like a bit of a natural progression, media into marketing, and then worked for a number of large organisations across the last 25 years, leading marketing functions and teams. Some of those organisations, some big banks here in Australia, the Westpac Group, ANZ, IBM in Asia, and then my most recent gig, which was with Visa.
And now?
And now I'm the best boss I ever had. I work for me. I have a portfolio career. Do you know what that means?
No. Well, kind of. I for those that don't though, can you explain?
So a portfolio career is a number of different things that I generate an income from. So the first one, and the one that brings me massive passion, is I'm an executive and leadership coach. So I help people unlock their potential, essentially, mainly corporates, a lot of women, a lot of men, but the majority probably would be women. I also sit on 2 boards, one listed, one non-listed. That's also a huge source of learning for me, because they are in 2 different industries that I've never, ever worked in, manufacturing and law. And I also do marketing advisory and advisory services around leadership, coaching and marketing for startups.
A lot to dig into there. We'll get into it. Let's go back to the radio days and you getting into radio. You were born in New Zealand, had a thick accent, and then you came over to Australia and you were working on radio. Did you change your accent? Because I can't hear an accent now.
If I've had a few drinks, darling, and I'm around a few other Kiwis, like
Never.
your grandparents, I can slop into it.
Yeah.
I had a really thick New Zealand accent when we arrived. I was 21 years of age. Mum and Dad had migrated to Perth, your grandparents, of course, which was really smart of them. They saw an opportunity and went over there and hoped that my brother and I would also go over, because they could see there was a bigger population and a lot more opportunity, and particularly in radio. So I rock up to the top rating FM radio station at the time, 96 FM, and I bowled up to a gentleman called Gary Roberts, who was a bit of a famous program director, so that's somebody who manages the on-air talent, if you will, and asked him for a job, and he pretty much almost laughed me out of his office and said, darling, you need to start in the country because you have a very strong New Zealand accent and there's a certain level of expectation we have here at 96 FM, which is understandable because it was a top rating station. Bastards. So I moved to the country and it was the best thing I could have done because in the country you actually get to do a lot of things. You don't just go on air. I had to do producing commercials. I had to be out and about doing outside broadcasts and a whole lot of things. But the country town I moved to, they weren't particularly forgiving of a New Zealand accent or a New Zealander being on their airwaves.
No,
so I had people waiting for me outside the station some nights, and I worked nights wanting to tell me what they thought of me and my New Zealand accent. So I learnt resilience pretty quickly. But I also figured out I needed to make a difference, as in make a change, so I could speak differently. So, and it's all about the vowels, yeah. So I put in a deliberate effort to start sounding like an Australian, much to the disappointment of my parents and also all my family and friends back in New Zealand.
No, it's very good. You mentioned resilience. I remember a good radio story you always used to tell us about Tiger Tooth, someone on the air. You would have had to have dealt with a fair few things. Can you talk us through that and like some of the issues you had to deal with, especially on the fly with radio?
That example you just mentioned, Tiger Tooth, was a fascinating one. That was a hostage drama in the town that I grew up in, and I was on air at the time that this young man took a girl hostage in his house and kept calling the radio station and using that as a bit of an amplification of what he was doing. He was clearly in a bit of strife and he was screaming for help, really. And so I, being my first job, I was pretty young. I think I was 19 or 20 at most. And I'd never experienced this before. No one could prepare you for this. I come in on air, next thing I get a phone call and it's this guy saying, I've got a girl hostage. Now, we used to get some really interesting people late at night and I was working very late at night. First job on radio, you do midnight to dawn, yeah? Because chances are you're not going to be good, you're going to make mistakes, a whole lot of things. So it was very late at night. There's probably not a lot of listeners. And this guy calls and says, I'm holding this girl hostage. I said, yeah, that's lovely. What song do you want? And he said, put on Tina Turner's Private Dancer or something. And I said, yeah, sure, no problem. So I put that on for him, and it's a long song, Tina Turner's Private Dancer, and I can still see the LP now going around the turntable to my right. And I remember thinking, I'm going to, 5 minutes at Tina's all right. By the sixth time he had requested this song.
Here we go again.
And I realised actually this was probably a young man having a few mental health issues, and there was a girl in the background who sounded like she was quite distressed. So that's when it dawned on me this was pretty serious. So I actually called the police, and then the police became involved. And this went on for hours. So I finished my shift after about 5 private dancers and Tina Turner. And the next DJ came in, took over, and the police were in the studio. But this time they were also surrounding the house where he was. He was known to the police. And it went on for probably 10 hours. And I remember being okay during the time and then realising when it was pretty serious that I needed to actually show a bit of empathy. I also needed to keep him talking. The police wanted us to do that so that they could use a whole lot of that, recording. So I had to learn pretty quickly just to I don't know, I guess be a bit resilient and manage it. My parents at the time were overseas. They were actually in Perth having a holiday and I was alone. And I remember coming off the shift and there was no way I could go home and go to sleep. I was just so pumped. And I went round to my aunt's place. I'll never forget it. And she looked at me and said, how are you going? And I burst into tears. And I'm not an emotional person. I've been sort of told I'm Tin Man sometimes. I don't cry easily. Anyway, but it was all this pent-up adrenaline, confusion, and I was also starting to get a little bit worried about the girl that he was holding hostage. Anyway, it all worked out. They got him. She was okay. And I don't even know what happened after that. But it was a pretty early introduction into, some pretty serious stuff that goes on.
That story's always stuck with me. You told it to us when we were young and I always thought about it. Going from, so you're in radio, how'd you meet Dad? Because Dad was on radio as well. Was it a producer and an announcer setup? What was the kind of...
He was the new guy. I was already, this was another radio station, a second regional radio station, but a bigger one, so I was really moving up the big time now. Had managed to curb the Kiwi accent, and word got around there was a new DJ coming, first gig in radio. He'd just come from radio school.
The
and
big dog.
A few of us sort of chuckled, oh, radio school? What a pussy. Anyway, in walks Ricky Phillips, and he had an amazing voice. And I remember thinking, golly, for a guy that's so thin, you sound good. Where's that coming from? Anyway, he became, radio is incredibly social. So you really, and we're in our 20s, so like most workplaces, the people that you work with become your friends, yeah? So you socialise with them, and we used to socialise a lot. We're in a country town. We used to have a lot of fun. And so he became part of our gang, and he was just an awesome person. And so, yeah, we became really great friends. I had to produce him because I started doing producing as well, so producing commercials when I wasn't on air, and he was obviously going to be reading scripts for commercials. So I started to produce him. But we didn't get together when we were at work. We were just friends.
Interesting. This is a running podcast, and I almost forgot at the start, Mum, we're meant to do running updates throughout the process. So if anyone is listening, hopefully on a run at the moment, we need you to keep running. You've been doing a bit of running.
I have.
What's a little key bit of advice for a real beginner that you've found helps?
Oh, Sunday run program. I mean, no, seriously. I haven't run in 30 years, Louis. You know that. I hate running. I've never liked running. There's a great gag, Joan Rivers said, people hate running. You never see anyone laughing when they're running. And I've actually watched people and thought, no, you're right. I don't see people laughing when they're running. But I was a walker, and I've generally kept myself fit. But I never thought I would ever run. And you said something to me that really, really stuck with me just recently. It was, if you're not enjoying running, you're not doing it right. And that's when I realised, maybe I'm not doing it right. Maybe I could enjoy it. And then you showed me the beginner program. And the thing for me, and I've been telling people about this, and I've been also posting a bit of content on my own tiny little Instagram, following feed, 10 people, family and friends, that,
10 of the best.
Where we started was I would run up and down the farm driveway for 60 seconds. And then I would walk for 30 seconds. And then I would run for 60 seconds. And that actually... I could do that. And I felt really good doing that. And what I love about the Sunday Run program is that it's all psychology based. I had no idea you were so smart, Lewis.
Yeah, we'll get into the full program in a bit. But essentially, people running, if you're not enjoying it, you're not doing it right.
Correct.
So you got to be enjoying it. So if you're on a run right now, just relax, maybe
smile.
Smile, yeah, put a smile on. It's actually a good way of tricking your brain. That actually is a tip, especially by like professional marathon runners. It's like relax your face a bit because it tricks your brain into thinking you're okay.
It's a similar tip to being on radio. They say smile when you talk. It'll actually come through.
Yeah, well, you can hear it, can't you?
Yeah, you can.
So radio thinking on the fly, like there'd be so many skills and stuff that you would have took from radio and applied it to your work life. Like I noticed it with podcasting so much, like just in conversation, in thinking on the fly, not panicking in conversation, so on. You get into work. How did you transition from radio into being a marketer?
Yeah. So I fell in love with your father. He was certainly on a career trajectory with radio because he had such a great voice. And he got offered a role in Canberra. And we had been on the Gold Coast prior to that. So we moved to Canberra, and it was a breakfast shift that he had to do. It was freezing cold. And I thought, well, I need to do something too. And it wasn't going to be in radio. I'd already started to decide that radio wasn't going to be my future as much as I'd loved it and enjoyed it. And I needed to find something else. So I lined up at a temping agency, which temporary work, and said, here's my skills. They're not particularly immense, but I want a job. And I got a temporary marketing role, a contractor role. When I say marketing, it was data entry for a financial services brand called the AMP in Canberra. So I actually started my first marketing role as a temp, as a contractor. And it was entering, information into a very early computer, a box brownie.
So you're building from there. When I think of your career in particular, Mum, it's like a lot to do with women in work. Like you've done a whole lot, especially from the like feminism. Essentially, I've always considered myself a feminist because of you and the way you explained that to me. How did that really come about for you as you started going through the ranks in helping women in particular?
Yeah, look, equality is a really interesting thing, and I came from a place of privilege. Yeah, so I'm a white, educated woman. So straight away, I have privileges. I don't have as many privileges as a white, educated male because I don't hold the power. Women don't hold the power in corporate Australia. Especially, they don't hold the power. So I didn't see it as a setback at the time because most young people are set on, following their careers or building themselves up or trying to learn a profession or figure out what it is they want to do. So there's not actually a lot of time for reflection or thought on, am I being held back or is somebody not giving me an opportunity? And I think a lot of that we don't notice. And that might not be a bad thing sometimes, yeah? Because what it does, it means you push on. And you perhaps don't see rejection or not being given a go as much of a setback as you might if you thought that it was because of inequality. So I just kept going. I made sure that the skills I had picked up in radio, going back to your question before, which was how to communicate well, how to establish relationships. One of the great things about radio that I have taken with me throughout my entire career and now coach on is the importance of feedback. So when you're on air, you are being recorded the entire time for a number of reasons. The main reason is so that you can actually play back that recording with your boss, the program director, who gives you feedback. Now, some of that feedback is positive. Most of it is to say, here's what you can do better. You become very resilient very fast. If you're not somebody who likes to be told you need to improve or you're not doing so well, you won't last. You won't last in radio. You won't last in life because we all have areas of development. So that feedback loop, that ongoing feedback loop in radio and being very conscious of what you're saying and how you're improving, I think has helped me immensely in my career.
And would you say most of your clients now in the corporate coaching side are female? And what do you think? What are the main reasons? Obviously, they don't have the power, just from the get go.
Some don't, yeah.
But what are things that are showing up? I always remember you used to say to me often the issue with pay gap in women has to do with negotiating power, and a lot of women not actually understanding how to negotiate.
Spot on.
How is that something you noticed essentially?
Absolutely. So 60-40 would be the ratio of women to men that I coach. I get, and from all industries, mainly quite senior level people and particularly senior level women, heads of EGMs, CEOs, COOs, CFOs, and a few board directors as well. And negotiation is a big one, yeah. So I actually studied this when I went to Harvard, yeah. So, and did a short course there some years ago. And it was made very obvious to me, and I can't believe I didn't even realise it, but I didn't, that women actually need to negotiate differently to men, yeah, because there are a whole lot of societal biases about how we should be, and that definitely plays out in a workplace. So if I want to negotiate something that is for myself, whether it be flexibility or a salary increase or a promotion, I've actually got to come at it as a woman from a place of how will this benefit the organisation, first and foremost, because it is unlikely you will be given the outcome you want if it looks like you're being self-serving. Women are never self-serving, or they're never meant to be self-serving. So just by knowing that, it taught me how to negotiate better. And I applied it, I put it into practice. I now coach on it. If you want to be a good negotiator, it's about cooperation and communication, but you've also got to know where you're coming from.
We have a lot of incredible young women who listen to this podcast. With that in mind, if you could go back and give your 18-year-old self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Well, there'd be two, okay? The negotiation, but we've already spoken about that. So my other one piece of advice would be choose your partner well. Seriously. Who you end up, or not even end up, who you are with at the time that you are in your career or in the prime of your life needs to be somebody who is a team player with you. You've got to support each other. Now, your father and I made a call very early days. Whoever earned the most money would go out and work. Now, your father is the least ambitious person you'll ever meet. He's not worried about money one bit. Would be living, under a rock if it was up to him. But what was important to him was actually raising his children. Thank goodness for that, because I was a way better parent at work, and he was a way awesome parent being at home. So he was the main carer of you and your beautiful sister, Maddie. Yeah,
which made you the breadwinner, and I wanted to bring that up. But it probably only clicked for me when I was about 15, 16 that the dynamic of our family was quite different in that you were the main breadwinner and Dad was, stay at home. Dad's obviously like very supportive of all that, and you know he's chosen alongside you to make that happen. Were there any issues earlier on, or like did you ever struggle with being the main breadwinner? I'm thinking back to Singapore. Dad kind of took the piss, so
Yeah. No, there were no issues with it at all. I never felt I was missing out. There were some moments of guilt, and sadly, whether you're Catholic or not, most women have guilt, particularly when it comes to their children. So there were some times I would have to be away for work and I couldn't be around, and you know, every time I'd go away, you would break something, an arm or a vase or something, and I'd get the call from your father, who would say it's all fine. It's been handled. He's now in a sling, or I've put the vase back together, but I just want to let you know. And so there was a bit of guilt of I should have probably been there, but very rarely, because we were such a team. We were such a team. He knew his role and he was doing an awesome job of it. I knew my role and I think I was doing an okay job of it. But again, we came together weeknights or weekends. We were just a normal family then.
Yeah, you weren't not around.
I'm pleased you've said that, because it was starting to sound like I wasn't. I was definitely around. I'm definitely your mother, Lewis. I've got the video to prove it if you want to see it. Don't know who this woman
is sitting across from me. I have no idea who she is.
Hello, dear.
I remember, like, Dad loves to piss people off. Like, he's pretty provocative like that. And we lived in Singapore for a bit for your work for 4 years or so.
That's right.
And it was the expat life, particularly kind of conservative to some extent. And, you know, Dad would get asked at the school pickup, oh, what do you do for work? And he'd say, I'm the stay-at-home dad, wouldn't he?
He would. So, yes, he was the expat wife, if you will, and I was the worker, which back in 2000 was pretty unusual. So most, families that were up there, the wife was the trailing spouse. She looked after the kids, managed the house, maybe even the domestic staff if they had them, and the husband went and did his job, and that was sort of how it was. We were unusual in that I was the worker, Dad was the main carer. There were a number of events we would go to, and he would be asked by the, mainly white, A-type male personalities around us, hello, mate, what do you do? And he would say nothing.
That's right.
He would say the word nothing. I do nothing.
nothing.
And these guys would look at him and think, oh, you're a loser, and walk away. And it was quite interesting because I used to say to him later, did you have to say nothing? You could have said, I'm doing the most important job of my life, and that is raising my children to be decent human beings. And he said, fuck him. And I quite like that about your father, which is probably why I married him. And at the end of the day, what was really interesting was it was those same people that were turned off by your father perceivably not doing anything, whose children, particularly their sons, would gravitate toward in the playgrounds because their fathers were absent. They were so busy working, they actually didn't have a lot of time with their fathers. And Dad and I used to think the decision we had made was the right decision for us. We'd never judge anyone else. That's their business. But, yeah, we were pretty pleased with how it worked out.
Worked out well, especially Dad's a teacher, so kind of needed him to be around for me my antics when I was young. We'll get into that in a sec. I wanted to quickly touch on leadership, personal development, goal setting and accountability, huge pillars of kind of what you teach. Leadership, always been something you've really emphasised to me. You don't have to be a captain to be a leader. You don't have to be at the front of the pack to be or the loudest in the room to be a leader. How has leadership kind of changed for you over the years, and what have you done to implement it in your life?
So first of all, let's define leadership. So leadership, and to be a great leader, is to be of great service. Yeah. So if you think leadership is about you, you're entirely misguided, in my belief. So leadership is about what you can do for others. And that's why I'm so passionate about leadership and why I've always been so passionate about leadership. And I guess I stumbled into leadership because I in my working life, as you do more of something, you get better at it, and then before you know it, you are managing or leading people. And I recognised fairly early on, and maybe this was a bit of luck, but I suspect my parents had a lot to do with this.
Yeah.
How you relate to people and the effort you put into getting on with people will serve you well, and particularly in business, because business is all about people. You can't create business alone. You actually need to build businesses with others and through others and with others. So I learned early on that if you look after people and you treat them well and you actually lift them up, they'll actually make you really successful. So it's about putting other people first. So that's the definition of leadership, and that's why I love it. I see what effective, impactful leadership does to communities, to individuals, to families, to countries, to society. So I think it has such an influential role in progressing ourselves and others for good that, I'm incredibly passionate about it. How has it changed? It has absolutely changed. So the leadership I entered when I was younger, in my early days, in my early career, was very much command and control, hierarchical leadership, which is very much about, somebody at the top and their word was gospel. They didn't often have much to do with you if you were a junior member of the organisation or the team, and you did as you were told. And there wasn't a lot of room for you to contribute your feedback or inputs. That has changed dramatically. Thank goodness. I mean, why hire a smart graduate who's just come out of, university, or somebody who's got incredible skills and strengths and not tap into them, irrespective of their age? In fact, you'll learn more if they're younger. You'll learn more if they're from a different country or a different culture, or they have a different belief system. So human-centred leadership is what we're seeing now come to the fore, and boy, it's about time.
Absolutely. I want to skim over these just quickly because we've got a huge episode to come. Personal development, what's that look like for you, and what do you preach in regards to that?
First of all, I'm not a preacher, Lewis. I'm your mother,
Preach
and
it,
I might
woman.
nag you, but I'm not a preacher. Personal development is about curiosity, in my view, and you don't need to go and do a course every week. You don't need to always read books, but what you should be doing is listening, observing, and exposing yourself to as many different conversations and ways of learning that you can. So I learn every day by coaching people. I get told the most amazing stories. I learn about companies. I learn about individuals. I learn about, leadership. So that's a great source of personal development for me, and it makes me reflect and think about how I can do things better, how I can do things differently, what I might need to invest in learning more about topics. And then I get a huge source of learning through Harvard business articles, through listening to podcasts. There's a really great one called Sunday Run, which I like.
Yeah, you should listen to that.
And also going out and talking to different people. So your father and I have a really broad circle of friends from all walks of life, at different stages, different ages. We learn a lot from you and your sister Maddie.
It's something you've always kind of pushed both Mads and I to do is reach out to people, and especially kind of look for mentors in life. And that's helped me a lot, especially recently, in just like sending out the message to whoever it may be, saying, mate, can we grab lunch or grab a coffee and really pick their brain? So I think that's helped us a whole lot. Goal setting and accountability, are you big on that?
Well, I've become very big on that, especially lately, because I've set myself a goal to be a runner. And I say that loosely because I shuffle, I don't run. However, I hit 5Ks yesterday, my first 5K run in, as I said, probably 30 years. So feeling pretty good about that. I set that goal, and what I've done is I've not given myself an absolute deadline, but what's keeping me going with that is the accountability side, and because I keep putting stuff up on my personal Instagram as well as my coaching Instagram, because I know that if I do that, then I remain accountable to those that are following me. And I know that there's a lot of people that have reached out to me and said, gee, Jack, if you can do it, maybe I can. And I want to encourage that because I know how good I feel.
Yeah, absolutely. Last question in regards to work. What's your biggest failure in regard to your career? How did you learn from it?
No failures. I don't think there's failure. There's certainly learnings. My favourite line is, if you're not winning, you're learning. One of the best things about going to Singapore was this idea that it would just be an easy transition from a role in Australia to a role in Singapore. I went up and worked for an advertising agency, a major global networked advertising agency. And day 2 on the job, I gathered the team that I had become, a part of, and we sat around and I spoke to them about a big pitch we had coming up, and I had about 7 heads nodding. The majority of these people were local Asian people, and then there were a couple of expats in the team as well. And they said, yep, got it. And I said, great, we'll do a check-in in a week's time. We don't have long, so that'll leave us a couple of days before we then have to pitch. I went back in a week and I said, okay, so what have we got? And I had blank faces stare at me. And I said, surely you've got something for me. And nobody said anything, and there were blank faces again. And I learned very quickly then, just because I had spoken didn't mean I was understood. And it made me become much more self-aware about how I communicated, how I check in more often, how I ensure that I am being clear, and also what barriers people might face in doing what I've asked them to do before it's too late.
Good. It's a good one there. Check in on everyone. If you are going for a run right now, you're probably about 2-3 Ks in. Keep going, keep breathing. This part of the run actually sucks generally. I generally don't like the first 2, 3, 4 Ks, and then you build into it and you get into a bit of flow state. So keep working for that flow state and keep listening to us because we've got plenty more to come. Next topic, Mum, is Sunday run programs and fitness for you. So I changed things up with my content kind of at the start of the year and really went that running route and just found so many benefits from it, obviously, as you know. I wanted that to be contagious. I wanted people to feel it and hear about it. And you were my kind of first point. I thought if I can get Mum into running, then like if she can do it, then most people can do it.
True.
You've been into fitness your whole life. Like it's always been an emphasis for both Mads, my sister, and I. Might have fallen off the thing a little bit. You maybe weren't doing as much fitness. Obviously got a farm, but not running as much as you used to.
No.
How did you kind of find starting the Sunday run programs? And then where are you now with it?
So again, I reiterate the psychology of running, yeah? So you and I have spoken about your mindset and your mind, and I've told you about that great line, your body's an idiot, it'll do anything your mind tells it to. And that wasn't lost on me. When you showed me the beginner program, because I was quite nervous, I thought, well, I'll give this a go, but I'm not going to be able to run, A, quickly or B, every day. But the whole point of the Sunday Run beginner program is that you don't do that. You start out by building up. And you go 3 days, I think, after your first little 60-second run, 30-second break, 60-second run, 30-second break, before you run again. Well, I was gagging for a run by the 4th day because I thought I did that bit and I did it actually quite easily and I quite enjoyed it.
Yeah, enjoyed it.
So the psychology behind what you've pulled together I think is really clever, and that's what I've told a lot of my friends. I also loved, I think it was the Sunday of the second week of the beginner program where you should treat yourself to an ice cream and have a
On
rest.
the last day, yeah.
And so I did.
You listened to
I'm
it.
following that program,
Maybe
particularly if
I'll
it
take that
involves
off.
ice cream.
You're not meant to actually listen to it. Yeah, it's amazing. As my fitness knowledge has grown over the years, obviously, I kind of obsess over it and it's been a big part of my life. It really occurred to me kind of when I was maybe 20, 21, 22 that like yours and most people your age, fitness knowledge is kind of built on the back of fad diets and
The 80s.
yeah, and the 80s and, take a quick pill to get rid of it. What's it been like having me as a child telling you exactly what to do in regards to fitness?
It's awesome. And I say that honestly because I don't claim to know as much as you. I know how passionate you are about this. I've watched you bouncing off the walls from the moment you could walk. You have always been so active, which is, typical of most healthy young children, I think. But you were always so physically oriented, anything with a ball, anything that required, hand-eye coordination, riding a bike, anything, you were obsessed with it and you were good at things, skateboard, balance. So I figured you knew stuff, so I was happy to learn from you. But you're absolutely right. The fads, when I think back at the 80s, I remember being encouraged to smoke because you wouldn't be as hungry. And that would help you stay slim because it had nothing to do with health or fitness. It was all about how you looked. It was body image. So they talk today about, how bad social media is because of body image and things. Body image back in the 80s wasn't great either. We just didn't have platforms to perhaps share it. However, I have always had high energy. I suspect I too might have a bit of ADHD, undiagnosed, but I've always had a lot of energy and I could always run a lot on very little, if you will. Not necessarily running, but go a long way on a little. So I needed to always, move, and so I always ran or walked or did aerobics or played indoor netball or soccer or something. And then I was a horse rider as well, so that required it. Fitness.
Your sleep schedule is the next thing we're going to work on. I think I need to do a Sunday sleep schedule because you're getting maximum 5 hours every night. It's unhealthy.
Not good.
Not good at all. So you've done your first 5Ks through the Sunday Run program, which is awesome. What's your goals going forward?
Yeah, that's a good one.
It doesn't have to be a metric either.
No,
it can just be your feeling.
Look, I haven't set an exact length, and I certainly am not worried about time. You made it clear to me, don't worry about the time you do it in, Mum, just do it. And that's helped me a lot, actually. So I shuffle away there, but it's getting a little bit easier. So the first couple of Ks, the hardest. I keep looking at my watch to see how far I've gone. I need to be distracted when I run. That helps me get into a bit of a flow. I also love learning while I'm running, so I love listening to podcasts. I know you prefer music, but I love podcasts. So listening to all sorts of different podcasts, and that inspires me with lots of ideas for my work, for creativity. And then before I know it, I'm sort of at the 4K mark. I've got the dog with me. He's a bit of a distraction because he sort of runs off and has a swim in the river or goes and tries to find somebody with food. So I've got to keep an eye on him. But I haven't set an actual goal as such other than just to keep doing this and see how far I can go. So can I get to 10Ks? And by when? I don't know, but I'd like to think I can.
Yeah, absolutely you can. I think it's fun. Having that base level fitness of 5K is really good because you can start entering into fun runs and stuff where you build like a bit of a community behind it, and that can be like your game day, something to work towards. It doesn't have to be a race. It's just more, the power of finishing it. I
said to Maddie last night, the Mother's Day Classic is coming up. We've always done that, as in not always, every year, but we did it for a few years there when you guys were little. We started off running it. I think we did the 4K one, and then I got a bit lazy and we would walk it. But you kids were always with me, and it was such great fun. There was a real vibe, and it was for a great cause. And I saw it, it came through on my email. I'm obviously on their database, and I said to Maddie last night, we should do this as a family. So we might look at that.
You might do the 5K.
I might do the 5K.
Something to work towards. Keep running. If you are still running, we're bloody with you, mate. Just keep going. Don't stop, because we've got a couple of big topics coming up, Mum, but we've also got a Q&A where I put out a story, and I don't think I've ever had a bigger response into what people want to know, and you'll get insights, I believe. Firstly, me as a child. Talk us through. I mean, I was a lot of trouble in regards to school. When did you realise that I was going to be a bit of strife?
You weren't any trouble at home, Bluey, at all. Your father had you military commanding. You were in line, and you had an awesome personality. What I loved most about you when you were a little boy was your determination, which is playing out very well now. So you are definitely being your authentic self. If I asked you to do something, you would say no, and you would say no with such determination. And I remember thinking, we're going to have to channel this determination in the right way, because it could go in the wrong way. And I remember, I think I said to your dad, you were about 10, I said, he's either going to be in jail or he's going to run the country. Let's hope it's the latter.
Let's hope so. Haven't gone to jail yet.
No. Well, please don't. So what were you like as a child? You were willful. You were cute. You were absolutely obsessed with your older sister. And, you were great mates right from the get-go. You used to run around in her little ballet dresses, which were cute. You were curious. You had a great vocabulary, and you loved learning. You were no trouble at home. But we figured out something wasn't right with school quite early on, because you didn't want to go, and yet you were a very social child who had always a lot of friends. So we knew it was something else, and that's when Dad identified you had a learning difficulty. And from there, we obviously made some changes to where you went.
Lots of trips into school for you. I remember a few meetings with the principals.
Yes, you were not an easy child to teach because you were easily distracted, you had trouble learning, and that affected your confidence. Now, everyone knows one of the greatest gifts anyone can have is confidence. And if, as a parent, if the only thing you give your children is confidence, then you have absolutely achieved as a parent. So we jumped on that pretty quickly, because we recognised that the only way you were going to get through life was recognising that you just learn differently, and that's the work your father put in to make sure that we could get you in the right environment so that your confidence wouldn't be affected, because you were smart. There was nothing wrong with your brain. You just learned differently to mainstream.
What did you think when you found out I was going to Steiner, when I was coming home with doing meditating and knitting and crochet?
Yeah, look, your father and I both thought that was a really good thing to do. We obviously had some insight into that through Uncle Mark. your uncle who is a Steiner teacher in Western Australia, and we both agreed that this could be a really good environment for you. And look, we had nothing to lose by trying it. It was the best thing that could have happened to you. So I don't know whether anyone knows about the philosophy behind Steiner, but Joseph Steiner was an Austrian. He was a scientist, philosopher and artist, so he was quite a complex character, and he created this movement, the Steiner movement, and it was very much about children will learn best if they bring their whole self to school. And it's about actually not setting any predetermined milestones by when they should read, when they should write, but in fact engaging them on a whole lot of different things, nature, art, and doing the learning through that. But to watch a 6-year-old little boy who was normally bouncing off the walls meditate and say, come on, Mum, let's meditate, was amazing. Best thing we could have done. Watching you sit in bed at night knitting. Your grandmother was beside herself. Finally, someone's knitting. Your grandfather was a bit worried, but that's okay. We didn't listen to him. It was the best thing that we did for you.
Yeah, good. Well, I eventually got through school, much to a lot of people's surprise, then into work/career. I've got a lot of questions here from people saying, what do you think of Louis' career? What do you think of what I do now? And, are you surprised?
Oh, that's a good question. I haven't thought about, am I surprised? I'm proud of you. I'm really impressed with what you're doing because it's coming from a really good place. I also am learning a heap from what you're doing, as is my peer group. They're asking all the time, what's Lewis up to? And a lot of them listen to your podcast. So I'm really proud of what you're doing. And, careers are fluid things. You're 24. If this is what you've been able to achieve and learn, and it's almost like a mini MBA, in fact, and teach yourself as well as gain learnings from others in, 4 short years, imagine in 8 years, imagine in 12 years. So I say keep going.
Absolutely. We've got a brimming question amount. Like so many people are sending questions, and it's pretty incredible. So thanks to everyone who have. I'm just going to whip through them. There's no real structure. Okay. Just plenty of questions. I'm not going to read out names just because there's some personal ones in there. But let's get into it. First one's from Davis Jarrah, who's he's a mate of mine and he does podcasts as well. He says, how proud has Lewis made you being able to impact many people positively? Goated mum. Do you know what goated mum means?
I have no idea.
Greatest of all time.
Oh, that's so nice.
Goat.
Great question. You've made us incredibly proud. And right from day one, your father said, whatever you and your sister do is up to you. Just go and make a difference. And I think you are absolutely living that. So well done.
What have your biggest challenges as a mother been, and how did you overcome it or them?
Recognising that parenting doesn't come with a handbook, that we have to figure it out ourselves. The way we were parented was probably not going to be exactly like we parent because things change. And also recognising 2 beautiful children who are very close in age from the same 2 people need to be parented actually quite differently.
What different companies have you worked across for the various roles?
So I've had 16 jobs across, I think, 8 different industries in 4 different countries. So I'd be here a while if I told you all of them. But it's been mainly in advertising and media, always in marketing. But the industries have been financial services and technology predominantly.
Yeah. What's your biggest achievement in life?
2, Madeline Phillips and Lewis Phillips.
Okay. What about other than your kids?
Remaining a major team player with your father and remaining happily married and excited about our futures. Relationships are everything.
Bloody oath. What career aspirations should you be considering as a young woman in your 20s?
Yeah, that's a good one. Look, you've got a long time. It's a marathon, not a sprint, yeah? You can have it all. You just can't have it all at the same time. So give yourself a break. Try different things, but try and do things that you love. Try and do things that you're good at because you'll get better and better at those things. Obviously become self-aware and learn. Get mentors. You mentioned those before. Really important. Most people will help other people. Anyone who reaches out to me for advice, I will help them. I will always do what I can to help others because people have helped me. Reciprocity, really important.
Was Lewis a naughty kid growing up?
Naughty? No, not at home. As I said, you were challenging because you were willful and you had a really strong sense of social justice. So you were always telling me what wasn't fair. And it wasn't just about what you didn't have. It was actually about if you saw something, maybe somebody who was homeless, you would say to me, that's not fair. And I remember thinking early on, that was actually a beautiful attribute.
Here's a good one. What was it like when Lewis first brought home a girl?
Yeah, you're a bit of a late starter. I was wondering there for a while whether there were going to be any girls coming home. Girls liked you. I knew that. I could see that in different social situations. Can you remember your school formal?
Yeah.
So year 11?
Year 10, I think.
Year 10. Okay, the first school formal, year 10. So Lewis's sister is almost 2 years older than him, and we'd been through a couple of formals because she'd done year 10, year 11, year 12, and we'd pimped her out to a few boys that needed a date that were family friends. So she'd done a heap of formals, and every single one of them was a major event. There was hair, there was makeup, there were dresses, there were nails, there was spray tans. You name it. So we would go on this roller coaster, formal prep for her, and at huge cost. And anyway, we get to your school formal. I'm getting quite excited. Oh, this is going to be nice. Louis' school formal, let's get you a suit. No, I've got one in the back of the cupboard. I said, come on, let's get you. No, don't need to worry about that. Mum, got one in the back of the cupboard. I said, all right, okay, well, it's in a couple of months' time. Let's get going. Yep, I'll let you know when I'm ready. All right. So a month out, okay, school formal, we're going to need a haircut. What about that suit? Are you sure the suit's right? What about the date? Yeah, leave that to me, Mum. No, there's nobody at the moment. And I'm thinking, gee, there's only 4 weeks out, but okay, I trust you.
We'll figure it out.
Louis.
Trust the process.
2 weeks in, Lewis, the suit, are you sure it fits? Can you put it on? You haven't worn it for a while. It's probably too short, too small. Is the shirt white? What about your hair? And for goodness sake, who are you taking? Don't worry about it, Mum. I've got it under control. But Louis, you don't have a girlfriend and you've not asked anyone. You told me that yourself. What's going on here? And you said, just leave it, Mum. And I could see you were getting frustrated, so I left it. 3 days before the event. The suit I've tried on, Mum. It's a bit tight, but it'll do.
It'll be all
Can you wash the shirt? I said,
Yep.
Yes, of course I can. My hair's fine. I like it longer anyway, and I think you were pushing it across to the side, which was cute. And you said, I still haven't got anyone, but I've got someone in mind. I said, Louis, it's 3 days out. She will already have found her date. Girls don't leave this stuff to the last minute. You said, don't you worry about it. The night before the formal, you said to me, got someone and you don't know her, you've never heard of her, and she's going to come over tomorrow for some prees with her mum. Is that okay? Oh, my goodness, thank God you've told me. I was going to be in the office. I'm going to make sure I work from home, and I want to make sure I've got some champagne and I've got some food and the house is tidy because I'm going to meet this young girl and her mum. So, and you didn't sort of say much about the young girl. The doorbell rings. You're dressed in your suit. You're looking pretty cute, but you still look so young and because you were tiny. And I opened the doorbell and I started at the feet and my head continued to go up until I looked like a giraffe. And there standing in front of me was the most glamorous Amazon of a young girl with the longest blonde hair, the most olive skin and the most sparkly blue eyes. She says, hi, you must be Mrs. Phillips. And next to her was her beautiful mum. And my jaw dropped. I thought, how the hell did you pull this?
She was gorgeous.
It was incredible. So that was the first girl I ever remember you bringing home. And I remember thinking, boy, you've set a benchmark high here, mate.
Yeah, there we go. That's a good answer there. All right, next up we've got, as a woman, what is the most difficult thing you've faced in your life, and did this affect the way you raised your children?
Most difficult thing I've faced in my life? That's a great question. It would be some of the decisions we made. I used to travel a lot for my work, and as I said, every time I travelled, you seemed to break something or something would happen, which was a lot of pressure and stress on your father. But I don't recall anything major other than there were some times I questioned what I was doing. And I remember a particular time I was working for IBM. I think I was in Thailand. We were running a major marketing event, and you and your sister and Dad had gone back to Perth to see your grandparents. And I remember calling Mum and getting quite tearful and saying, I should be there with you all, and I'm starting to wonder about being this high-flying career woman. That was the only time. And I'm not sure why. Maybe it was a hormonal thing. I don't know why. I can't remember why, but that was the hardest thing. And then I snapped out of it.
Tough bitch. She kept going.
Never thought about it again.
The old tractor. Good.
That's me.
All right. At an organisation making layoffs, what's the best start to find a new role in this economy?
network. Yeah. So ask for help, ask to meet people. Now, this idea, everyone's going to want to meet you for coffee, that's bullshit. Everyone's too busy to meet you for coffee, but they can have a quick call or they can have a quick DM through LinkedIn or an email. So don't be afraid to approach people. If you don't know someone and you want to know them, find out who does know them and ask if you can be introduced to. And this is very true of women and young women. They often don't put their hand up for help. They don't often ask. They're embarrassed or they don't think people will want to talk to them. I think men are better at this than women, and women have got to get better at it. Use your network. Ask for help.
Fantastic answer. Dumbest thing Lewis ever did growing up?
How long have we got, Louis? There was a time you walked out of the shower and your nipple was bleeding, and I said, "What the hell have you done?" And you said, "I shaved it."
Shaved it off, mate.
And I said, "Why did you do that?"
Just give it a go.
And I think you said, "I just wanted to see what shaving was like."
Yeah.
But don't shave your nipple, Louis.
Shave my nipple off.
I think you're a 9 or 10.
I think my left nipple is slightly smaller than my right one.
Surprise.
Maddie Phillips asks, who is your favourite child?
Django, the golden retriever at home.
Good, fantastic. What's something you would tell your younger self about health, running and body image? This is a nice one to finish on.
Yeah, this is a good one.
Particularly body image, I reckon.
Well, health is all about how you feel, yeah? Mental health, physical health, spiritual health, emotional health. It's about how you feel, not how you look. So, and how you feel generally is a correlation of how you look, I think. You can tell when someone is generally healthy in all facets, and that's because they've got their mindset right, they've got their body and fitness levels right, and they are managing stress well, because we all have stress.
Fantastic. There you go, Mum. Thanks so much for coming on. Jack Phillips, to everyone who's listening, people can reach out. You're LinkedIn famous.
I've got a few followers on LinkedIn.
You've got me covered in that regard. If people want to reach out, where can they find you, Mum?
Jack at jackphillips.com. I'm certainly on Instagram, jack.coaching, and Jack Phillips on LinkedIn. I think I'm the only one that, is Jack.
Fantastic. Good. So how'd you find it, the podcast?
Thoroughly enjoyed it.
You did
really
well.
enjoyed it. I didn't ask you any questions, though, which is a bit remiss of me.
Next time. So I'll look to get Dad on and Mads as well in the future. But this has been really fun. Thanks for coming on, and thanks to everyone for listening.
Thank you.
Good stuff.